Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm with Peter Lynn. Peter, today we wanted to talk a little bit about the open source community's kind of invasion into the AI space. And Wes Roth put together a little summary of Mistral AI's sort of update on where they're at, or where that project is at. Can you give us a little bit of a background of what is Mistral AI and what is the open source community doing in the AI space?
Sure. So open source isn't actually just one. It's a loose community of different people, and people jump around between projects. I don't actually know who is involved in Mistral, but I mean they range from researchers at universities to working programmers. The latest update is a 7 billion parameter model that is performing comparable to GPT-3. And so one of the things earlier this year was that paper, that so quote leaked paper from Google, "We have no moat," of like open source is doing things we're not exploring, and they're going to catch up. Well, it's December and they've caught up.
Okay,
to
so how big is the ChatGPT 3 model approximately?
Well, we don't know because Open AI has not stated that, and they don't want to tell the world. But people have guessed. I mean, it's more than double two, which was no, I think three was 178 billion, and then 3.5 they didn't say, and four they didn't say. Right. So 3.5, it could be 300 billion. We don't really know. It could be 500 billion. We don't really know. And they're probably never going to say it. And four is supposed to be a mixture of several models that George Hotz had mentioned, which is very likely. So combined, four is probably a trillion parameters.
Okay, so 7 billion is a lot less than whatever number they're using, right? So explain, if you can, like kind of what's happening here. They're doing something, OpenAI is doing something with their models, and it's very, very big. And the open source community, or at least with this Mistral project, is doing something else, and their models are very small. What do they have in common, and what are they doing differently? Are you guessing?
Well, open source it's individuals and it's universities. And if you ask the universities in the US, no one has the hardware power that Google has, or Microsoft, or NVIDIA, or Facebook. So if you want to do something cool, innovative, you don't have an option, right? Like you don't have 1,000 servers. So you have to get creative. You got to think of what are the techniques that have been written about that haven't been explored sufficiently that we can squeeze more power out of these different ideas. And so that's what people are doing in open source. Is there's hundreds of papers up on arXiv, and people are just trying things. They're like, hey, let's look at this paper, look at that paper. So in the case of Mistral, they looked at work by Ilya when he was at Google, and they took it further.
And what was
applied
that?
it.
What were they looking at specifically?
They're looking at an old paper called a Mixture of Experts. But there's actually way more than that. I mean, there are all kinds of, in the last couple of years, there have been attempts to refine and improve transformers to make them more efficient. And so there's a whole array of things that people are trying that probably don't seem all that promising to OpenAI and Microsoft, because they have the data, they have the hardware. So like their thought is, well, we got the data and the firepower, so let's just load up more.
So in a sense, OpenAI is kind of they have fewer constraints, so they're building probably like a monolith of model, or there's a monolithic model. They're just building this massive thing that churns massive amounts of information. But what you're saying is most street programmers or the university types, whatever, they have constraints, right? And
Yeah.
so, to a certain degree, necessity is the mother of all inventions. So they're forced to to think outside
Right.
multiple boxes, probably, right? They're probably tweaking their models, they're probably tweaking their data, they're probably and so in that sense, like we used to say back, 20, 30 years ago, their code is tight, right? They're basically writing better models.
Yeah. If you think back to the space race, when NASA sent someone to the moon, one of my wife's uncles used to work at NASA. He actually was the one that took the flight control unit, put it in the freezer to freeze it and take it out and figure out how to reboot it because they had shut it down and it was going to be frozen. So they're like, okay, you need to figure out, Jerry, figure out when we boot up the machine again, what's the sequence, right? Like those computers has 64K of memory. Like today, I mean, your iPhone's got anywhere from 4 gigs to 12 gigs of memory. So it's just completely different. So when you're constrained, you have to get creative.
Well, so in a certain degree, this will be good for society, for humanity, this constraint that will force people to continue to innovate, really. And so there's an innovation thing happening in the open source community.
Oh yeah.
So what can the street ML dude, what can they do, and how would they do it with Mistral or any of these other um, ML products? Do they go somewhere and download the code? Do they run it on their system? Do they run it in the cloud? Or what do they need to do in order to do this? What's the practical method to do this?
Practical method is just jump in. Don't be afraid of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, guess what? Neither do the experts. I mean, they have more experience and they have more hardware, but at the end of the day, just start reading papers, start downloading examples, go look at Kaggle competitions, go to Hugging Faces, download models, play with it, kick the tires, see how that works, try to break it. Because, at the end of the day, someone in the future, some bright 18, 20-year-old is going to like realize, oh, wait a minute, I could do this other thing. And then it'll just completely change ML.
Do you need a big system in order to download one of these models from Hugging Phases?
No, I mean, the models range from like 1 gig to about 20 gigs, depending on how big you want to get. So regular MacBook M1 Pro is just fine. Even a M3 Air is just fine.
Okay.
You can run a 3 billion per annum model just fine on a MacBook Air, which,
And you could also download it into the cloud too if you want to, right?
yep, if you want to pay for cloud and you get the pocket to pay for it, you can do that. If you want to
How
be
big
cheap,
is the how big is the Mistral AI model?
it's 7 billion.
7 billion. Okay. And are you aware of other projects like this in the open space community that are getting recognition?
There are people working on there are people refining the Llama 1 and Llama 2 models. So
Oh,
there's
they sort of carved that out as their own little
yeah.
open
So
source unit.
when Llama 1 came out, Stanford researchers refined it and called it Alpaca. And then people have built up on top of both Llama 1 and Alpaca, and now Llama 2. And there's a group trying to reproduce GPT-3, but completely open source.
Hmm.
Then there's Yannick Kilcher's project that they just shut down called Open Assistant, where they focus on creating a data set. So now that data set is open source. It's available up on GitHub. You can download it and you can do whatever you want with it. So people in open source are going to keep doing this, and it's going to keep accelerating. And so as much as OpenAI wants to control everything, it's out of the box. So
Yeah. They have no moat.
No.
Well, this is good. We'll include the link to Wes Roth's YouTube video. It's 19 minutes. It's worth the watch. And we encourage anyone who's interested to get into the open source game with machine learning. It'll be probably the ultimate revolution, because with no moat, there's no
Yeah.
rules, and the open source guys always win.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say always win. History says that they will. It's kind of like it makes you think of the Gutenberg press. Before the printing press, only a few people were taught to read and taught to write. If you wanted a book, you had to go to a monastery and you had to sit there and copy a book. But then the press was invented, and then all of a sudden knowledge was free. And then we had this whole explosion of knowledge innovation since then. So it seems it's going to happen with open source.
No, it's good. It's an exciting time, and sometime we'll hit up the ethical ramifications of a sort of a moated AI universe, the castles, versus the we have no moat open source universe. But until then, thanks for watching. We will try to put out good content. Questions are always welcome, and we'll try to stay on top of answering and providing more interesting and intelligent ideas. So take care, everybody.